A pleasant morning to each and everyone. I am Eresha Carolino, your discussant for today. For today's video, I will discuss to you the cross-linguistic influence, morpheme order, and transferred studies. Objectives: Number 1, to understand how learning one language impacts the acquisition of a second language. Number 2, to investigate cross-linguistic influence to the morpheme order of studies. Moving on with the definition of terms. Cross-linguistic influence. This is the impact of a person's knowledge of one language on their study or usage of another language. Morpheme. A morpheme is a brief linguistic piece that fits two essential requirements. It is a meaningful word or a part of a word. It can't be broken down into smaller meaningful chunks without losing its meaning or leaving a blank space. SLA, or the second language acquisition, is the study of how second languages are learned and the factors that influence the process. When we say acquisition, it refers to how we learn our first language, which is through real-life communication rather than formal instruction. We make assumptions about rules as we learn and use them to communicate until we notice that the rule is different or includes exemptions. Introduction. For more than 50 years, several theorists and researchers have paid close attention to the role of the first language in foreign language learning. It has also contributed to a better understanding of second and third language acquisition in general. The broad picture of the mechanisms involved has been enlightened by studies on language transfer and research on cross-linguistic effect. Let us now go on with the discussion. When we say morpheme studies, this refers to the series of studies that have investigated the acquisition order of grammatical morpheme by first language and second language learners. The central question of these studies was whether learners show a universal pattern in the acquisition order of morphemes. If present, a universal pattern could indicate the existence of a universal mechanism necessary to acquire language. A series of studies established that second language learners follow a universal order in the language acquisition of second language English morphemes, a view that remains dominant to this day. However, in the 40 years since the first morpheme studies, SLA research has established the influence of the first language on second language acquisition. It is natural to expect that first language to also influence the role or the order of the morpheme acquisition. Importantly, a recent survey of morpheme studies by Luke and Sherai strongly suggests first language influence. Therefore, revisit the morpheme studies to investigate the first language influence, at the same time addressing some of the methodological shortcomings of previous studies. In particular, exploring the Cambridge Learner Corpus, a rich empirical resource that allows us to investigate the question by drawing from a rich dataset of learner data from 7 first language groups across the 5 proficiency levels. Moving on with the methodological challenges of the transfer studies. Jarvis proposes the 3 empirical criteria for demonstrating the first language influence or transfer on second language acquisition: intergroup homogeneity, intergroup heterogeneity, and the cross-linguistic performance congruity. Learners with the same first language should show the same acquisition order among them, whereas learners from different first language backgrounds should exhibit different acquisition orders. So when we say intergroup heterogeneity, then needs to be linked to the existence of a corresponding morpheme in the first language performing in a similar manner with the second language. For instance, early acquisition of possessives by Japanese learners of language can be linked to the Japanese particle no, which expresses possession. It is crucial that intergroup homogeneity and intergroup heterogeneity are investigated in a single research designed because they are inherently relative, relying on a comparison of how similar or dissimilar groups of learners are from each other. All in all, Morpheme studies evaluate the long-standing claim for a universal order of acquisition, investigating the second language acquisition order of the 6 English grammatical morphemes by learners from 7 first language groups across the 5 proficiency levels. The study establishes clear first language influence on the absolute accuracy of morphemes and their acquisition order, therefore challenging the widely held view that there is a universal order of acquisition of the second language morphemes. Moreover, we find that the first language influence is morpheme-specific, with morphemes encoding language-specific concepts most vulnerable to the first language influence. That would be all, and thank you for listening to our discussion for today.